Hi there, it's Dan here, back with another video. Today I'm going to be showing off, you guessed it, some more comics I got. And, time permitting, I will show off some of the things that I've recently read and give some recommendations. Try my best to keep the dog in here with me this time, so if there's a little outburst or I need to go take him out to the other room, just be warned about that. But he's being pretty good right this moment between my legs. So I want to start by giving a little shout out to a new YouTuber that I just discovered by way of Daryl D, and this new YouTuber's name is Big Elbow. So Big Elbow was recently mentioned on one of Daryl's videos, and I decided to check him out. And looks like he's got a really cool channel. I've watched quite a few of his videos so far. He's got some really good hauls, and he just posted a new video showing off some stuff from a Lone Star order that he did from some kind of a holiday sale. And it seems like he has really good taste in stuff. But I wanted to thank him as well because he commented on a few of my videos, and I discovered I think he is from somewhere nearby here in California. And he asked if I go to any cons. And I told him that in my town, there pretty much is never a Comic Con. We used to have one a long time ago, and I think the last one was 2019. So I think the organizers of it, during the pandemic just gave up and never brought it back. And it was decent, actually. I felt like it was at the fairgrounds, so it was fairly good sized. And I always managed to find quite a few things there. And they had some guest signing books and things like that. But in general, I haven't been to any legit cons. I've never been to one in a bigger city or anything like that. So he pointed out a few to me that are coming up through the comments. And he also mentioned, I woke up this morning and I saw a comment from him that he had just sent this morning saying that there was a con in my town today. And I had no idea about that. It wasn't advertised at my shop at all. And it was something called Ohana Con, which I've come to find out is basically a very small traveling convention that goes to different places in California, mostly Northern California. And I think it's all pretty much smaller towns. Like I heard a list of some of the other places they were, and they were all fairly small places. Excuse me 1 second. All right, Skippy. Okay. So I was like, wow, there's a con today. I'm there. And so I went down there, not really expecting much. He told me that he has gone to their cons in the past, and usually it's not worth the entrance fee, and he just kind of goes to support them, which is cool. So when I showed up and I got to the door, now this was in a very small venue, by the way. I got to the door and I looked in and was like, any comics here? So I asked the lady that was working the table, I said, is there anyone selling back issues? And she looked at me like, what's a back issue? I was like, oh boy. She's like, I'm like, comic books, like used comic books? She's like, oh, ask that guy. So I asked this other guy, and he's like, oh, I think maybe one person has some comics. I'm like, oh, okay. He's like, well, you can go in and take a look around, and you don't have to worry about the entrance fee if you just want to go take a look and see. So I went in, and sure enough, there was only one vendor with comics. And it was a very interesting situation. I could tell almost instantly that there wasn't going to be much to offer me. It was very small, and it looked like the majority of the boxes were just like alphabetized Marvel and DC kinds of stuff, maybe some Dell and things thrown in there, but not a whole lot. A smattering of some CGC books, which doesn't interest me at all. And so I started looking through the boxes and figured out who the owner was. It was this guy over to the left, and he was this old Asian man with a veteran's cap on. And I instantly noticed that his prices were ridiculously high and just totally unrealistic. And I saw a sign down below that said 20% off. So I was like, okay, well, at least they have a sale. And then I spotted some boxes to the left that were discount books. They didn't have 50-cent boxes. They didn't have dollar boxes. They had 2 short boxes of $2 books. So I was like, I can tell what's going to happen. I'm going to look through these boxes. I'm going to find a couple of $2 books, buy them just so I can say I didn't leave here empty-handed and then just bail. So I started with that, and I did grab out some stuff from that box. So I'll start by showing those. These were all originally priced at $10 and marked down to $2, but you can see some old detectives. These probably are not worth $10. I didn't, look at the condition. They don't look bad, but I got some detectives that just filling in holes in the run. I like the late 80s Batman and detectives. So I got 587. I got 592. That's pretty rad with the Lincoln attacking that broad. That's pretty crazy. That's actually a really cool cover too. We got 596. Batman strung up with some film negatives. Cool. It's like these are some Breyfogle issues. Then I got 597. Far less impressive cover on that one. I got 628. This one's from 91. I don't know who did that cover, but that's a pretty cool cover. And that's Jim Aparo on the art on this one. And then I got a Batman 473. It's kind of a wacky cover. And then just randomly grabbed this issue number 3 of Inferior 5. I think I've seen Damien show off this video or this comic in a video before. But look at that. I mean, he had it priced at 20 bucks. So everything was crazy expensive. And then randomly got this Vault comic called Goobers. I opened it up and the art looked kind of cool and it was gross out stuff. So I was into that. So I was kind of expecting that to be it, but I asked the guy, I'm like, I'm really interested in more of like indie comics and weirdo stuff. Is there any, anything outside of the typical mainstream? And he said that he had some EC comics, that I like EC comics. And I said, oh yeah, of course. He's like, well, they're not the real ones. They're like the 1991 reprints and stuff. And he said, I think that box is still in the car, but we can go get it for you. So I was considering maybe seeing what was up with that, but I've got quite a few of those 90s EC reprints from my shop for like $2 or $3 in the past, and I wasn't really interested if he was asking a lot. I was like, well, what are you selling those for? He's like, I think they're about 12 bucks each. And I was like, yeah, forget that. So I was pretty much just ready to go. I looked through the boxes and I did find one thing that with the discount seemed like a reasonable price, even though it's not in the greatest condition, but I got something I'd never seen. It's called Aliens Special from 97. And I'll break this out real quick because this art is really great. This is Frank Terran on the cover with this super cool alien in a tuxedo. And there's 2 stories in here. The first one is by Frank Terran, writer Darko McCann, but it's all wordless. And I think it's only like an 8-pager, but Frank Terran's art is fantastic. So it's just some kind of like countdown thing. I actually haven't read this yet. I just got it today, but I did look at the art a bit. Could have read it really fast, but I'm going to soak this art in. Then the second story takes up the majority of the issue. It's by Nancy A. Collins, penciler Leaf Jones, inker John Stokes, called Elder Gods. I'll just flip through a few pages of this one. Doesn't look bad, but the whole point was that first one was just so good. So I looked it up when I was there, and I think this comic typically goes for 20 bucks or more. So I think I got it for like 8. And then in the back, it's got some previews for some pages from Alien Havoc, which is awesome because it's all in black and white. So it's got John Totleben, Art Adams, and Gary Gianni with Jeff Darrow right there in black and white. And then after that, it has a preview of Aliens Alchemy, Corbin in black and white. Awesome. So this series was originally in color, so it's really nice to be able to see that Corbin art stripped down in black and white. Fantastic. So I was kind of thinking that was going to be it, and there was a few random boxes sitting around that were not that regular alphabetized stuff that had higher end comics. So I've kind of made it clear on these videos before, but I don't really spend a lot on any single issue I'm not out to collect high-grade copies of things. I'm really more about just being able to read the stories. So when I can get a cheaper copy in poor condition, I will usually always go for that, unless the price is very like a minimal difference. So I was looking through these boxes of crazy expensive stuff, just thinking in my head, like, why am I even looking through this? I don't buy expensive comics anyway. What am I going to find in here that would actually be worth me spending the money on? And then I came across one book that I actually really wanted. And I went in there not even thinking I'm looking for anything in particular. And the one thing that actually went, oh yeah, I have actually been looking for that. I didn't even think about it going in, but they had it. And it was crazy expensive. And I pulled it out and I asked the guy, and he's like, well, that's a number one, that's why it's a lot of money, because it's a number one and all the number ones are going to be more. Okay, well, yeah, but you sure this is the price? And this is where I have to introduce this other character to the story named Tony. Tony was this cool guy, probably about my age, maybe a little bit younger, who was sort of just helping him out. I think they were sharing the booth, and Tony was basically just selling, I think, like rugs that have Spider-Man and Thor and stuff on them. And a lot of people were buying those rugs, actually. And he might have been selling a few toys and stuff. But it was a really tiny little booth, and it was super cramped, and I kind of felt bad because I was standing in front of the comics. There's probably no way anyone else could even come in there and look around. But Tony was told me that he was a veteran and that he served in like Afghanistan and Iraq and somewhere else around 2009, and that the whole reason he was involved with this other gentleman was because he was a veteran too. And the guy was old, and I think he was probably just helping him out. They could share a booth. He probably helped him carry the boxes in from the car. But the main thing that I think Tony did was he helped him actually sell shit, because the old man was not interested in making any deals. And Tony realized these are way overpriced, and you're just keeping the same sticker price you've had on these for decades probably, and they're never going to sell. And I mean, I think the previous day they were in Yuba City, and I think they were excited that they made $150, but it was all because of Tony. And the guy's like, do you want to make another $150? We should start making deals with people. So it's not even that much money to make. But he kind of stepped in, and I was hearing him negotiate some prices for someone else. And then when I showed him this comic, I'm like, yeah, I mean, I'm really interested in this comic, but I don't think, you can get the price down as low as I would want. He's like, well, let me see what I can do. He kind of looked it up on his phone to see what they went for on eBay and stuff. And it is a really high grade copy. And he went over there to the gentleman, and they were just kind of right in earshot, and I could hear him sort of quarreling, and the old man was putting up a big stink about it. And finally, Tony came over, and he was just like, did you hear any of that? I was like, no, not really, but I kind of did. And he's like, yeah, so, he really doesn't want to do it. He doesn't want to drop the price on that, but he's going to. I was like, oh, wow, really? And so I felt a little obligated once he told me that he talked him into it to do it. But then I also started thinking, like, I usually would go to a convention like this maybe with $75 and leave with $75 books. But I don't really need $75 books right now. I just got a ton of free books from Daryl, and I have a ton of comics I haven't even read yet. And so maybe I should focus my money on one higher priced item. So I did, and it was a great deal. It was still more than I've ever spent on a comic before, but I got number one of The Monster of Frankenstein. He had this thing priced at $225, and I got it for $70. So awesome. It's easily like a very fine to near mint. There's just a couple teeny tiny little ticks in the spine, but I mean, it's really, really clean. I mean, this corner looks like it maybe has a tiny bit of wear. And once again, I'm not concerned about the condition, but if I'm going to spend a lot of money on one book, it is nice to know that it is well protected. It's in a Mylar bag, and it even has a clear backing board, which I've never actually seen one of those in person before. Doesn't do much for this comic with that ad on the back. If it had a cool back, that'd be something else. But I'm really interested in collecting this series. I've just read issue 4, I believe it was, that I showed on a previous video. That is a coverless copy I have. I also just got a really crappy condition copy of number 2, but it has all the pages, so that's all that matters. So now I've got number 1, and I'm going to start to piece this together. I've been looking on eBay, and eventually I'll probably get them, but I did it. I actually sprung for a very expensive comic, and I'm pretty happy that I did, because I really dig this art, and I think that's going to be an awesome addition to the collection. So it's pretty much good at that point, but I looked through the boxes some more, and then the guy was like, "Were you interested in checking out those EC comics? And we'll go out to the car and grab them." I was like, "Oh, sure, why not?" And, you know, at $12 a pop, I was not going to buy them. Well, they brought in the box. They had a lot of them, actually, quite a few, and they're all from the early 90s, you know, and they're all priced at $20. And then the price tag is scratched off, showing $15. So they were originally trying to get 20, marked them down to 15. The guy goes and, Tony goes and asks the old guy what he can do about it, and then negotiates, and he comes back and he's like, "All right, we're going to give those to you for $5 minus the 20% discount. So you're going to get them for $4. Basically. So all of these were just $4 and a piece, and then he threw in several of them for free. So I started out by grabbing some Two-Fisted Tales that I needed. I have the first 7, and I have a few other random issues. So here's number 8. Here is number 7. It's Kurtzman made some really great EC comics. I love Two-Fisted Tales. There's number 10. And there we have number 11. So I got 4 issues of Two-Fisted Tales. And I started reading number 7 earlier, and I was pleased to note that it was in very good condition. Not that I care, but it's just one of those things I really love when you crack open a comic that's, 30 years old, 33 years old, something like that. And the little holes, those little perforations on the bottom of the pages stick together when you turn the page. You can tell that this comic had never been opened and read before. So I actually have another comic in my stack here that did that too, but I have a feeling these EC comics were from some old store stock and have never actually been read. So these are all probably near mint. So I also got Weird Fantasy number 2. I already had number 1. Weird Fantasy number 3. Number 4. There's 5. It's a beautiful cover there. Number 7. I don't think they had a 6. And 8. And then they had a lot of the horror stuff too. So they had both of the different versions. One is like the Russ Cochran, and one is, I think, the Gladstone or the Gemstone, one of the two. I can't remember. I can't keep track of them. But these were the 64-page ones. So I got Tales from the Crypt I think these 64-page ones basically produce a little portion of an issue of Tales from the Crypt, and not in chronological order, and then the rest of the comic is some strips from one of the other titles. So hopefully it's not stuff I already have in other books, but for $4, this is a lot more comic too. 64 pages. So I got number 2, number 4, number 5. What's it going? And number 7. So all in all, made out pretty good, and I'm excited to check this out and report on the whole story once I've read it and soaked in that Mike Plug art. All right, well, didn't take too long to do that, so I'll talk about a few of the cool new things that I've recently read. Just an honorable mention really fast, because I haven't finished reading this whole series yet, but I've been reading Cul-de-sac. Holy crap, this is so good. The art is just so good. The story is also very good, and some of the dialogue could be a little bit better, but this art is just so freaking incredible. I would really recommend, if this looks at all appealing to you, this style of art by Jonathan Wyshik, if you still see these on the stands, to grab them, because I'm pretty sure that Bad Idea does not have any intention of like putting out trade paperbacks and stuff. So the issues is probably the only way to get it. I'm sure they're not going to like skyrocket in price or anything, but just because all 6 issues are now on the stands, if you haven't got on that, I would definitely recommend it. The art is insane, but I'll show that off when I finished reading it. So here's one that's newish, and I just finally reread number 1 and then read number 2 and 3. It's a 3-issue series from Image called Bear, Pirate, Viking, Queen. And this is absolutely beautiful. And those cul-de-sac issues, which I think are $6 cover, are like 48-page issues, and these are as well. At least the first one is super duper thick. So this is written by Sean Lewis, and all the art is by Jonathan Marks Baravecchia. There's the names at the bottom there. And the art is the draw for me on this. It is absolutely gorgeous. It's all painted in a mixed media kind of approach with a lot of watercolor and paint splatter. And the story is a little bit hard to describe because it's a bit of a surreal kind of tale. It doesn't, have a really clear purpose, the story. He did make a note at the end that kind of, there was like a little blurb at the end of issue 3. It kind of cleared it up a little for me. I'll see if I can find that really fast. I should have taken note of this before I started, but oppression. That was sort of, I think, the overriding theme in this comic is oppression. So we start out with this pirate, and this bear comes up through the sea, and it starts out with the bear pirate. And so this first chapter is all about the pirate meeting this bear. I can't remember much beyond that, but who cares? Look at this art. So stuff's going on with the pirates, and they're plundering and doing the things pirates do. But honestly, yeah, I'd spend maybe a week since I read this first issue, so it's escaping me a little bit. I'm not that professional, as you can see. Definitely influenced by Bill Sienkiewicz, but just gorgeous, gorgeous artwork. Every page I stared at for so long. Really good lettering. So this first tale is mainly just about the bear and the pirate. Then on to number 2. I think at the very end of number 1, the Viking shows up. And the pirate is now out of the picture. Let me see if I can... Yeah, here we go. When the Viking first shows up, it's so awesome. I look at him up there in the mast. And when he jumps down, he jumps down, and you can see these big, fucking lighting is bad. Those big tusk things coming down. Look at this guy. He's got this crazy headdress thing with these big antlers. Super sweet. So here's number 2. I looked on Lone Star too. I don't know if it's a trade or a hardcover. I think it's just maybe a trade paperback of this. It was really, really cheap. So if this looks appealing to you, add that to the cart. It's a lot of black and white in this one. So chapter 2 is about the Viking. But what happens is the bear accompanies the Viking through this next part of the tale. I honestly just can't remember enough to really explain the story. I remember when this first came out, and Damien was reviewing it, he didn't like the story, but he did, I think, like the art. And I can get it, like, the story didn't stick enough in my mind for me to really be able to explain it to you. Parts of it I definitely remember, but mainly the thing is the Viking is obviously shouldn't still be alive. There shouldn't be Vikings at this point in time when the pirates and the queen, there's the queen, and you can see that he uses that like doily print stuff into the imagery like Sienkiewicz would do, but I don't feel like he's ripping off Sienkiewicz. I think he's got his own thing going. But for somehow the Viking has lived all this time and is still around, which doesn't seem possible. Anyways, the Queen's got he's got some major beef with the Queen. Yeah, issue 2 is a little skinnier. Issue 3 is back to being like a good 48 pages. I think the first issue might be 64 pages or something. But look at this, the Queen is suiting up into some armor to battle the Viking. The Viking has these 2 women with him that have been with him this whole time, and I think they want to get away from him. It's unclear, I think, if he's helping them or is kind of has them as captives. Love that bear in the water there. It's so good. So absolutely gorgeous comic. There are a lot of double page spreads in this comic, so if you did get the collection, hopefully it would lay flat enough to be able to take in all these spreads. But I definitely recommend it. And I think those issues were also like the lowest they go on Lone Star, like $2.65 each. All right, you ready for a weird comic? This is a bizarre comic called MAAC Vigilante from 1994, and it has no publisher. Well, unless this Death of a City is a publisher, but there's no indicia of any kind, and it doesn't say inside anywhere any publisher. There's no ads for other comics by this company, and on Lone Star it just lists it as publisher unknown. So we've got this target on the Statue of Liberty, Rakin' and Bacon first issue. So this is a weird 90s power comic. I got this because I heard about it from Power Comics. There's the credits at the bottom. The rest of this page is just some ad, but yeah, that's all they give you is that right there. Now, at first glance, it looks terrible. Like the coloring looks really bad, and then it has this typeset, but then it switches between that and this hand lettering that's not that great, but it adds to the charm of it. So it's just such a weird comic. 36 hours ago, military scientist John Bears experimented with a biochemical enzyme which, when combined with the organic secretion of the body's various vital organs, would prolong life and improve its quality. There was, however, an accident which caused an explosion. This discharge was the catalyst in the creation of a type of energy spore which has been named Factor Maximus. Upon physical contact with Factor Maximus, John Bears suffered a tremendous corporeal trauma which led to his present malformation, a metamorphosis which he could not bring himself to live with. However, there are other intriguing individuals who have need for Dr. Bears in his present condition. So that's all. It tells you everything you need to know about the guy on the first page, and he's like some weird angelic bat-like creature. And he meets these Greek goddesses, and they explain how Zeus has proclaimed the total destruction of the earth and all its inhabitants by the year 2001 is going to happen because, humans are just fucking up the earth so bad. So they're going to give him one chance to be their lone warrior to prevent the destruction of earth. And there's some kind of meteor that's going to hit earth in 2001 and destroy the earth. So he has to take out all the bad guys and change the ways of the world. Just one man by himself from then on. And he comes in and it doesn't really explain like he knows what's happening. He seems like he doesn't quite know what's going on, but he just instantly starts to get into these battles, and then he breaks into this place and finds this little sphere, and like the energy of it goes into his chest and shoots out like fire, and the Messiah is born. So that was like his birth. And then you've got these guys in Lebanon, terrorist kind of guys, and they're building this giant walking war machine, the biggest of its kind in the world, so they can take people over. Then we switch to this scene in Texas, Houston, Texas. That's just a really crazy, weird sex scene. And you don't really know who this guy is because you've only seen our main character as that weird bat wing guy. But he's having sex with his lady, and then all of a sudden he sort of morphs back into the monster, and she screams. And then I think it was a dream or something like that. Anyway, now we're at the Statue of Liberty. They're targeting it. Holy Mary, Mother of God, what? And he's all freaked out. So art is just so bizarre. And that big machine blows up the Statue of Liberty. There it is, down. Statue's head is down. So he comes in hot to get that war machine and slashes at it. And then the woman wakes up, and she turns on the news and sees him doing battle, and she's like, "Oh no, dear God, no, John, what have you got yourself into?" Doesn't explain at all that she knew that he had gone through this transformation or anything like that. And then he's fighting against some missiles. That's pretty cool. And blowing up more parts of the statue. And this guy blows off the like tablet she's holding, and it's gonna fall on this random cyclist. And he uses his powers to blast it as it's coming down, but then all the rubble falls on top of him until he can finally get out, and there's the little bicyclist down there. A little bit more battling. They snare his arm and zap him, and he falls down into the water. And there is the last page. The machine's still there, about to kill him. And that's it. I really, really like that final page. That back page is so great. There was never a second issue, as far as I know. Is it fantasy, a reality, or is it a dream? MAAC, or MAAC, Vigilante. Weird. All right, go fairly quickly through the rest of these. I don't have a whole lot to say about them, but just kind of showing off some of the things. I read the A1 Volume 2, Number 4. This one was pretty nice because it had the conclusion of the Jamie Hewlett story, Peter Milligan, King Leon. But unfortunately, it's not all Jamie Hewlett art. It's just Jamie Hewlett with assistance from Joe Flatters, Glenn Dillon, and Philip Bond. So it's pretty apparent that they all helped out with the art, and it does not really look like Jamie Hewlett that much. It starts out like it, and then it kind of changes, and you can tell that's not Jamie Hewlett. And yeah, the whole point of this story was that this guy is somehow the like long lost missing descendant of the Queen of England, and they're going to try to make him king, but they don't think he should be one, and he's not sure if he wants to be. It was a good story. I mean, it was good. It didn't have like a good payoff though. And skipping forward, this took up the majority of the issue. There is a absolutely beautiful wordless strip in here from the guy's name. I think it's John Muth? No, Dave Dorman. So this is a strip by Dave Dorman, and I don't ever listen to music when I'm reading. My wife was playing some music, and I said, you know, I was kind of hoping to read. Can you turn off the music? And she's like, all right, just one more song. And it was this ambient song. And I just started reading this. I didn't know that it was going to be wordless, but the ambient music she had in the background just went perfectly with the vibe of this story. as I read it. It's very simple. It's just this motorcycle guy with this crazy gun. There's like a little quote at the top, but there's no real dialogue. Guys are working on those train tracks. And the train's coming in. And they're pull some kind of heist on the train. It looks like old-timey, but you know, there's motorcycles and guns with a million bullets and stuff, but then they get in there to this woman and blast her sentence. Okay, I guess there was a little dialogue at the end. That's right. Just a tiny bit. Yeah, that's right. The ending didn't have a whole lot to offer, but beautiful comic. I think by the time that dialogue started, her song was over. And there's some Dave McKean in here, and it's just mostly art. There's some little bits of text. It doesn't really doesn't do much for me to read these little artistic quotes that go with stuff. But it was cool because this was all kind of focused around jazz music. It's just beautiful art, though. That's about it for that one. All right. This is a new comic that just came out called Zombie Terrors Undead Special. One shot from Asylum Press. And I got the, it's the only cover they had left, but Steve Mannion cover. Really love Steve Mannion, and I love his Fearless Dawn series. So this is Frank Forte is the guy that is behind Asylum Press. And the first strip in here takes up half the issue. It's by Frank Forte. It's called Cosplay Sacrifice. And it's just about these two guys going to this comic convention. And it takes up quite a few pages. So like 1, 2, 3, 4, probably the first 5, 6 pages, aside from his little encounter with this woman here, or this girl that he likes from school. It's just all nerdy comic book collector stuff. It's just, you know, hey, careful with that book, you know, it was a low print run. Relax, I'm just making sure there aren't any missing pages. Last time I bought a book sight unseen, it had a mail order ad clipped out. So it's just like how many little comic book insider things can they throw in here? But anyway, the girl gives him a smooch, and she's got her other cosplaying friends hanging out. She gives him a smooch, so now he's all into her, and they're done with the convention. They're sitting outside in the alley, and all of a sudden a bunch of zombies in cosplay come up. I feel like I've read a story just like this in another comic before. But anyway, the guy bought a big sword at the convention, luckily, so they're able to slice and dice up those zombies until the girl that he likes shows up. And he's like, oh no, not her. And the whole time they're fighting, he's like, I don't want to harm her because I think we still could have a future together. And he thinks he still has a chance with her, even though she is a zombie. Kind of cheesy, but I liked it. It's kind of fun. And then he ends up just getting her head. It's like, I'll just keep the head. The second one here is totally like just straight up traced photos. Just Photoshop and then add some lines over the top of it. Don't like that at all. But it was just a story about a cannibal who gets eaten by zombies. Pretty classic. Now here's the reason I got this comic. The third story is drawn by Tim Vigil, and story by Mark Kidwell, who's collaborated with Vigil before, and then script by Jeff Vigil. I don't know of a Jeff Vigil. I just know of his brother Joe. So maybe that's a typo and it should say Joe Vigil, but I think it's probably another family member, Jeff Vigil, that is doing the scripting on this. So Nat did Mark Kidwell did the story and Jeff Vigil did the script. So this is not peak Tim Vigil art, but it is good. I kind of just wish it would have been in black and white. I think Tim Vigil is always better in black and white. But there's this like undercover cop guy who goes to this, like, this is in like the 60s or early 70s. There was some kind of orgy, and then all these zombies show up. So it's only like a 4-pager. It's unfortunate. The art is good though, but not a lot to do with the 4-pager. And then the last one's a 4-pager as well. Script, Pablo Barbieri, art, Carlos Vera. Survival. I also thought this was going to be wordless, and there's just a little dialogue at the very end, I think, but this is the best art in the book. This is super detailed, much like Tim Vigil's earlier stuff was, but I think Vigil puts more work in when it's his own project and when he's doing maybe something for someone else or a work for hire thing, not like a serious collaboration, and he maybe doesn't give it as much. But this art is really nice. I won't spoil the last page there. Okay, I read a old copy of Strange Adventures from DC. It's issue 234 from 1972. Nice Joe Kubert cover on that one. And had 4 stories, I believe. Human Icicle, Carmine Infantino and Bernard Sachs. These are all reprints from 50s comics. Been a little while since I read that one. That was 1955. Here, this one was pretty fun. Where is the Paradise of Space? And this is a Star Rover story. So I don't know if the Star Rovers was like a popular team that was around for a while, but stories by Gardner Fox, art by Sid Green. And it's these 3 characters who are always competing with each other and going on crazy outer space adventures, and they go to this weird paradise land and hijinks ensue. Pretty nice story, actually. It was very fun. That one's from 1962, actually. Then The World That Vanished, story by John Broome, art by Cy Berry. This one was about these aliens who sent something to Earth to warn people that their planet was going to be destroyed, and Earth thought they were talking about Mars, because there was supposedly a planet right here, Apollo, between the sun and Mercury that we didn't know about. And everything in these old comics is all about like bio rays or gamma cosmic rays. This is like, this one and that EC comic I read are both talking about cosmic rays. Man, in the 50s, they thought cosmic rays were definitely on the horizon. And then the last story is a Adam Strange story from 1962. And I like old Adam Strange stuff. I never really sought out to collect it or get into it, but by reading old science fiction anthologies, I got introduced to the character, and I do think he's pretty cool. So that was a fun one. He's kind of has to fight and then team up with like a twin of himself. It's not really his twin, but another alien. I'm not going to bust this one out. Here's a Ghost Rider number 58. This was definitely some of the weaker art I've seen on this Ghost Rider run, but I do like it. He finally had his rematch with, what was it, Flag something or other? Flag Farragon? I can't remember. Anyway, this comic had never been read before. This is from 1981. This is a few months before I was born. And the little perforations in the bottom were still stuck together, so you could pick one page up and it would like peel the other page up with it. I love that for some reason. It's so satisfying to pull those things apart slowly. Newest Geiger, number 20 here, introduces the Northerner to the mix. So that's this character right here. And I think he maybe popped into like Junkyard Joe at some point, but now he's in the mix. I think he's got to be from Redcoat, which I haven't read. But it's cool. It's like a time-traveling guy from the Civil War era, and in his like alternate reality, the South had won the Civil War, and then he got like time traveled to 1962 or something, and he was part of the civil rights movement, and now he is in the world of Geiger, and he wants to help get them back to where they can get back to the point in time where they need to do whatever needs to be done to reverse the unknown war. So we'll see if that happens, but always a fun story. close to the end here, guys. We got 2 issues of Girl Crazy that I got on one of my recent Lone Star orders. So this is Gilbert Hernandez, and this was fun as fun gets. It's just beautiful, beautiful art, 1996, all done by Gilbert Hernandez, except for the lettering. And I'm really not going to try to explain the whole story, but there's these 3 girls who are they all share this the same birthday, and they're turning 16, and now they're going to they all kind of have these weird superhero type lives, and they're going to try to spring this 4th girl out of prison. And it is just what you expect from Hernandez Brothers wackiness, with sci-fi and big boob girls that are very funny and quirky and get into battles with all kinds of different unlikely subjects. So the final issue, the other girl gets out of the pen, and there's sort of a twist with what happens there. But all these covers have different artists. This final issue is Coop did the cover for this one. And yeah, Girl Crazy, definitely recommend it. Don't think it's an expensive book to get. This was very cheap for me to get. All right, so the next issue came out of this new series called Our Soot-Stained Heart from Mad Cave, and I've talked about this a little bit before. I really liked the first issue. This is some names I'm going to have a hard time pronouncing, but like Joni Hogg and Stephen Morian. I think it's going to be Stephen, like Stephen, kind of. Anyway, this issue, our main character gets to the area where the Baron is, and he's kind of like a reverse Santa Claus in a way, where all the people in this world have to do bad all year long so that Santa can bring them coal. Well, the Baron brings them coal, and that is what helps them to keep everything going for the next year, to keep themselves warm and keep their machinery working. It's a steampunk-esque world, but it's very light on the steampunkness. I barely would recognize this as steampunk if it wasn't pointed out on the cover of issue 1. I will say that the art in this isn't as good as his art was on 20th Century Men. I'm not sure if by some weird chance this was like maybe a comic he did beforehand in another language, and it was just translated by Mad Cave, and then he did 20th Century Men after this. As far as I can tell, what I read online, 20th Century Men was his first comic, and he has another comic coming out soon. But either way, he dialed it back to a more cartoony style for this, and I'm not complaining. It's really, really good, and the story is really fun. And here they are heading out in these big zeppelins. That's, I guess, a steampunk-ish kind of thing. And there's a shot of issue 3 coming soon. And the last thing I'm going to show off is I got through the first issue of The First Kingdom, and I'm going to try to keep up with this. I hope I can do it. It's a little bit daunting, but this is an absolutely beautiful comic, and I really did enjoy reading it. I made somewhat of a mistake because it's so much text. I made a mistake of reading the first half and then putting it down for a few days and then picking it up. I should have just plowed through it, because the first half of the story introduced these main characters and kind of how they're going through this sort of apocalyptic type world that they're in, searching for food and searching for game. And then he has, the main character guy has this woman with these 2 children, I believe, and sort of starting their family together, and he's protecting them and providing for them. And then they meet these other people, and so they actually sort of have a larger group. And then in the middle of the comic, it jumps to this other kingdom place. So by the time I picked it up again and started reading it more, I was like, oh, that's right, there's those other people now, and there's all of a sudden a lot of names to keep track of. At first, it wasn't hard at all to keep track. But then as soon as it got to these characters, I was getting a little lost. I think I'm just gonna not care. I think I'll just plow through this, and what sticks in my mind sticks in my mind. What doesn't, doesn't. It is what it is. I could always go back and reread it. Probably not. But it quickly came back to the main characters we know, and there was some very exciting action towards the end. And the art is highly detailed and very nice in a still somewhat scratchy underground kind of feel. So I'm going to do my best to try to read 2 a month and get this all read within the year. We'll see how that goes. All right, well, thanks everyone for watching. Thanks to Big Elbow for pointing out the Ohana Con that I went to, and thanks to Tony for talking to the old man and getting me the sweet deal on the comic and getting me the other discounts and stuff. Really nice of him. All right, you guys, talk to you soon.